You've been watching Taylor Swift for years. She's the girl who turned heartbreak into anthems, the star who built a billion-dollar brand from the ashes of teenage vulnerability. But what if I told you she doesn't fully own the empire you see? What if behind the glitter, the stadium tours, and the streaming numbers, there's a quiet machinery, one you were never supposed to notice, pulling strings, collecting data, cashing in on every emotion you've ever felt listening to her songs? This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is financial fact, buried in shareholder reports and multi-layered contracts. Hidden behind smiles and Grammy speeches lies a network of corporate power that treats her name like an asset, because to them, that's exactly what it is. You've seen the fame, but you haven't seen who profits from it. And once you do, you'll never listen the same way again. What if I told you that Taylor Swift's name is registered and monetized across holding companies you've never heard of? That major shares in the platforms distributing her music are owned by the same financial institutions that influence political elections, real estate bubbles, and even war economies? Companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street aren't just passive investors. They're architects of influence. They're everywhere. And they've learned that in the 21st century, culture is the new currency. Controlling a narrative is more valuable than oil. And the best part? You'll pay to consume it, and thank them while you do. Her face, her voice, her love stories. They're all part of a trillion-dollar ecosystem that quietly shapes what you wear, what you stream, what you believe. Not with force, but with rhythm, with hooks, with stories that don't just entertain, they indoctrinate. Most fans don't know this. They're not supposed to. You're not meant to ask who owns the masters, who owns the licensing rights, or who benefits every time a viral video uses a Taylor Swift track. But the answers are there, hidden in corporate filings and acquisition deals. You see the cover art, but you don't see the contracts. In 2019, when Scooter Braun's company bought the rights to her early catalog for over $300 million, the media spun it as a celebrity feud. But it wasn't just drama. It was a signal that music ownership isn't just about art. It's about leverage, influence, control. The illusion of independence hides a deeper truth. Taylor is powerful, yes, but she operates within a system that's far more powerful than any one artist could ever be. And now, you're about to see that system. If this already makes you uncomfortable, good. That means you're still thinking freely. That means you're not fully under the spell yet. But be warned, the deeper we go, the harder it is to ignore. Because Taylor Swift is just a face. The real players are never photographed. They don't walk red carpets. They don't post on Instagram. But they're there, always, quiet, watching, profiting. Keep watching. You're about to see how far this empire really goes. Before we continue, hit the like button. Not for me, but for the truth that's about to surface. Because this was never meant to be public. She's the face of resilience, the soundtrack to millions of lives. From country beginnings to pop stardom and indie revolution, Taylor Swift's career reads like a modern fairy tale. Stadiums roar with her name. Documentaries praise her voice. Not just her musical one, but her political stance, her independence, her reinvention. She's a symbol of female empowerment, artistic autonomy, and emotional connection. But beneath the applause, behind every chart-topping hit, there's another version of this story, one you weren't supposed to hear. Because while the world cheers for Taylor, a different group quietly counts the profits, far away from the stage lights. Taylor Swift is not just a musician. She's an economic asset, a high-yield investment wrapped in human emotion. Her face sells tickets, her voice moves markets, and her name drives billions in media exposure, product tie-ins, and brand alignment. But who actually benefits? Who pulls the levers behind the scenes? Let's go back to 2006. A teenage Taylor signs her first record deal with Big Machine Records, a label later bought by Ithaca Holdings, owned by music executive Scooter Braun. The headlines at the time spun it as a betrayal, a personal feud between artist and mogul. But the real story wasn't about personal grievances. It was about ownership and who controls the product. Taylor's masters, the very recordings of her early hits, were sold as assets, like properties traded in silence. The emotional connection millions felt to those songs was collateral in a much bigger game, portfolio building. Scooter Braun eventually flipped those masters in a deal worth over $300 million. But he wasn't acting alone. Private equity was watching, and they were buying. You see, in the modern entertainment economy, owning the music isn't the end game. It's the gateway. Once you control the rights, you control the licensing, the branding, the narrative. And the major players behind these moves aren't entertainers. They're financial giants. The Carlyle Group, Blackstone, KKR. Firms with no musical history, but with billions in capital looking for assets with emotional reach. Entertainers are now investment vehicles. And Taylor Swift? She's one of the most profitable examples. This isn't about discrediting her. It's about understanding the machine that benefits from her existence, often without her fans or even herself fully realizing the scale. Look closer, and you'll find that the same institutions that own shares in energy conglomerates, defense contractors, and pharmaceutical giants also hold stakes in streaming platforms, media conglomerates, and record labels. BlackRock, for instance, is a top shareholder in Spotify, Disney, and Universal Music Group. The people deciding which songs reach your playlists aren't necessarily the ones in the studio. They're in boardrooms evaluating quarterly reports. Every stream, every view, every social trend is analyzed not as art, but as ROI. And when Swift releases an album, it's not just a cultural moment. It's a financial windfall for companies that operate silently in the background. This isn't an attack on Taylor Swift. She's one of the few artists who fought for control, re-recording her masters, and publicly challenging the system. But even that move, powerful as it was, didn't fully break the chain, because the market still trades on her name. Licensing agencies still profit. Hedge funds still forecast returns based on her releases. And the algorithms still push her music to maximize ad revenue. The more you love her, the more someone else wins. Not just her, not always her. So the next time you see a headline about Taylor's tour breaking records, ask yourself, whose records? Who's counting the revenue? Who owns the platform streaming her performance? Who owns the ads playing before her music video? It's not just entertainment. It's engineered economics. And the empire you see is just the visible tip of a much deeper structure. A structure that doesn't care about melody or message, only about market control. Stay with us, because in the next segment, we'll show you the actual names behind the funds, the real contracts, the flows of money that make or break an artist's public image, and the invisible power that keeps the public entertained and distracted. The story's just getting started. What you're about to see is all public. Nothing here is hidden behind passwords or secret servers. The truth has always been out there, just buried under headlines, layered in financial reports, disguised by glossy interviews and streaming numbers. And Taylor Swift? She's one of the most monetized names in modern culture. But while the world watches her sold-out tours and devours her Easter egg-filled albums, a silent network of beneficiaries collects checks in the background. Not fans, not artists, but financial institutions, private equity firms, and asset managers who turn every lyric into leverage capital. Let's start with numbers. In 2019, the masters of Taylor Swift's early music catalog were acquired by Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings through a $300 million deal with Big Machine Records. Most saw it as a feud, but financial analysts saw a strategic move, one funded by the Carlyle Group, a $370 billion private equity firm that co-financed the acquisition. Carlyle doesn't specialize in music. They specialize in assets with emotional reach and scalable returns. Taylor Swift wasn't just a voice. She was a commodity, her songs a portfolio. In 2020, Braun flipped the masters again for a rumored $300 million-plus deal to Shamrock Holdings, a firm with deep ties to Disney Family Capital. Each transaction was cloaked in press narratives about creative rights. But make no mistake, the trades were about profit margins, not melodies. And behind every streaming play, there's a silent stakeholder. Spotify, one of the largest platforms for Swift's global reach, has its top shareholders listed on every earnings call: BlackRock, Vanguard, and Morgan Stanley. These firms don't just invest in music, they invest in control. Spotify's licensing deals with Universal Music Group, Taylor's current label, are designed not just to distribute music, but to own the ecosystem that defines musical relevance. UMG itself is owned in part by Tencent Holdings and Pershing Square. Again, we're not talking about art. We're talking about capital structures, shareholder equity, and monetized culture. Take a deeper look at UMG. It's part of a tangled web of holdings, once under Vivendi, a French mass media giant, now publicly traded with major stakes held by, once again, Vanguard and BlackRock. These firms appear like phantoms across industries. They own pieces of the platforms, the labels, the advertisers, and even the news outlets that cover the drama. Taylor Swift becomes a multi-level investment strategy. The concerts? Backed by sponsors tied to hedge funds. The merchandise? Licensed through distribution firms tied to logistics conglomerates. The music videos? Monetized through platforms governed by algorithms trained to prioritize content tied to ad revenue, not authenticity. It gets darker. In 2022, Shamrock Holdings, the same firm that bought her masters, was reportedly exploring strategic partnerships with other media conglomerates. Why? Because once you hold the rights to songs, you don't just license them to platforms. You integrate them into films, shows, video games, and brand campaigns. One song becomes 1,000 licensing deals, and each deal is structured, not with artists in mind, but with investors expecting 7 to 12% annualized returns. Swift's art becomes predictable cash flow. These aren't rumors. These are facts, traceable through SEC filings, press releases, corporate websites. This isn't just about Taylor Swift. This is about a model, a blueprint that turns public affection into private equity. A system where your playlist isn't built by preference, but by profit optimization. Where a single artist's voice is routed through dozens of hands before it reaches your ears. And every step of that journey is owned, measured, and monetized. That's why when she releases an album, stock prices move. Because her emotional expressions are built into quarterly projections. Think about that. The rawest lyrics, the most vulnerable performances, they're calculated line items. That tour you're saving up for? That album you cry to at night? Their revenue centers mapped on a spreadsheet. And yet, most people will never see it. They'll stream, they'll buy, they'll idolize, without realizing they're feeding a machine. A machine that uses art to extract emotion, then turns that emotion into equity. If this video hasn't been taken down yet, share it. Because content like this doesn't always survive. And the more people who know, the harder it becomes to ignore. You don't have to believe every connection. Just follow the money. And ask yourself, how much of what you love is truly yours to choose? Stay with us. The next part reveals the pattern across other artists and the empire behind pop culture as a whole. If you think this story ends with Taylor Swift, you're not seeing the full map. Because what's happening to her is part of a blueprint, a method replicated across the entertainment industry with terrifying precision. The names change, the headlines change, but the architecture, it stays exactly the same. Let's start with Justin Bieber. His rise to fame was meteoric, but behind his public image, behind the music, the controversies, the redemption arc, lay another familiar figure, Scooter Braun. The same executive who bought Taylor Swift's masters also managed Bieber from the start. And just like with Swift, major equity firms were involved in shaping and securing the rights to his music, tours, and media image. Carlyle, Shamrock, Universal Music Group, different artist, same ecosystem. Then there's Rihanna, a global fashion icon, billionaire, independent. But peel back the Fendi brand, and what you find is LVMH, one of the most powerful luxury conglomerates in the world. LVMH owns Mode, Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, and part of Rihanna's empire. Fendi is innovation, yes, but it's also investment. Engineered for dominance in high-margin markets. Marketed as cultural revolution. Backed by institutional strategy. She's still the face. But the structure behind it is ancient, powerful, relentless. Even Beyoncé, hailed as the epitome of creative control and black excellence, has a story that's far more intertwined with corporate infrastructure than fans realize. Her deals with Pepsi, Netflix, and Adidas were each part of a greater alignment between culture and capital. And at the end of those chains, shareholders, holding companies, boards. It doesn't stop at music. Take Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, wrestler turned actor turned media empire. His production company, $7 Productions, has partnerships with major studios. And those studios? Owned by conglomerates, Comcast, Warner Brothers Discovery, Amazon. Each of those parent companies have the same institutional shareholders: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. These funds don't just fund, they shape strategy. They sit on boards. They influence casting, content approval, release strategy. So when you're told a story on screen, you're not just watching a movie. You're witnessing a boardroom decision wrapped in fiction. Even sports isn't immune. Look at Lionel Messi's move to Inter Miami. What looked like a football transfer was, in reality, a multi-brand alignment involving Adidas, Apple, MLS, and private equity. When Messi plays, Apple TV subscriptions spike. Adidas jerseys sell out. Revenue soars across sectors. Messi becomes a multi-platform asset, not just an athlete, but a profit generator threaded into 4 verticals. Sound familiar? That's because this system isn't limited to entertainment. It's built to expand into politics, into tech, into education, and it always follows the same path: identify influence, acquire access, monetize emotion. That's the real strategy. Emotional equity. Every time you connect with a figure, cry to a song, laugh at a scene, we're a brand, you're adding value. And the system knows it. It harvests your reactions, predicts your preferences, and maximizes your loyalty. Not to the artist, but to the ecosystem built around them. The artist becomes a delivery system. The profit flows up. Ownership becomes dispersed, diluted, buried under layers of corporate walls and faceless investments. So when Taylor Swift fights for her masters, it matters. But she's pushing against a tidal wave of precedent, designed to ensure no one artist ever controls the system that made them. And here's where it gets deeper. This isn't just about fame. It's about control, cultural control, emotional direction. If these institutions own the faces we trust, the voices we follow, and the stories we believe, what else do they own? How many of your beliefs are actually yours? How many of your choices were quietly shaped by market forecasts and investor strategies? That's why this matters. Because the next time a new star rises from nowhere or a powerful narrative floods the media, you'll know where to look, not at the spotlight, but at the shadows behind it. If you're still with us, you're not just watching, you're waking up. Subscribe now, because in the next chapter, we uncover how this financial web extends into elections, activism, and even movements that seem organic. And you'll never look at going viral the same way again. You think this is just about celebrities, about record labels, contracts, or billion-dollar tours. But the truth is, what we've uncovered goes far beyond music. It touches every screen you scroll, every brand you wear, every story you trust. Because when power shifts from governments to corporations, and then from corporations to investors, you, the individual, become the product. Your preferences, your attention, your loyalty, all carefully extracted and sold back to you as entertainment. The empire behind Taylor Swift isn't just a financial machine. It's a mirror reflecting how culture is engineered, how choices are shaped, and how freedom is redesigned to look like fandom. Let's talk about your daily life. When you stream a song, it's not just data, it's influence. That one stream feeds algorithms that decide what you'll hear next, which artists will rise, which ideas will trend. These systems aren't neutral. They're optimized to favor content backed by institutional capital. That means more exposure to what serves shareholders and less to what serves you. When platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Netflix, and Instagram recommend content, they're not just suggesting, they're steering. Not with intention, but with precision. You believe you're exploring, but you're being funneled. And who funds those platforms? The same names that appear behind Taylor's masters. BlackRock, Vanguard, institutional giants with portfolios spanning every sector, from entertainment to pharmaceuticals to military technology. Their goal isn't cultural enrichment, it's asset performance. They don't need to censor you if they can drown you in noise. That's the brilliance of soft control. Give the illusion of choice while quietly nudging outcomes. When an artist's success is tied to back-end agreements, when every click is monitored, when attention is currency, what you see, hear, and believe becomes a product of design. This is where it gets personal, because what you think is taste, your music taste, your fashion taste, your political taste, is often pre-curated. You're not choosing from a buffet of options. You're choosing from a menu written by someone else. And the more emotionally invested you are, the more valuable you become. Your tears during a breakup song? Monetized. Your joy at a reunion tour? Monetized. Your outrage at an injustice posted by a celebrity? Monetized. Even your rebellion is tracked, categorized, and sold to the highest bidder. Taylor Swift becomes a trigger, a gateway, and your resource. But it doesn't stop there. These patterns extend into the way you form identity. The rise of relatable content, of parasocial relationships, of influencer culture, it all conditions you to attach to symbols instead of substance. The more you idolize, the less you question. And while you defend your favorite artist online, unaware that the very controversy might be orchestrated, someone else is profiting from your defense. Your energy becomes fuel. Your beliefs become tools. What seems like emotional connection is often emotional manipulation. This isn't just about music. It's about manipulation through aesthetic. About how power wears the face of your favorite artist while whispering policies you'd never approve. This is the new politics of desire, of distraction, of engagement. If they control who you admire, they don't need to control how you vote. They already own your emotional capital. They already speak through the voices you trust. So the next time you hear a chorus that makes you cry, ask, who benefits from your tears? When a campaign goes viral, ask, who funded the first spark? When everyone around you is suddenly obsessed with a new trend, ask, who stands to gain from your attention? Because this story isn't just about Taylor Swift. It's about how your reality is being edited, marketed, monetized. It's not gossip. It's your autonomy. And the scariest part is most people will never notice. But you're not most people. You're still here. You're still asking. And that means something. If this made you feel even a flicker of unease, don't let it fade. Comment what part opened your eyes. Share this video before the algorithm buries it. And whatever you do, don't miss what's coming next. What we reveal in the final chapter will change how you see your entire digital life. Now you've seen the contracts, the companies, the cycles. You've followed the money from a song to a stock, from a lyric to a ledger. You've watched Taylor Swift become a symbol of empowerment, of artistry, of independence, only to discover the scaffolding underneath her rise was built by institutions that couldn't care less about art. That kind of realization doesn't fade easily, because once you notice it in her, you start seeing it everywhere. In every headline that feels too perfectly timed, in every sudden rise to fame, in every brand campaign disguised as social justice. You begin to ask yourself, if they control the artist, what else do they control? What starts as curiosity turns to discomfort, because deep down, you already feel it. The patterns, the repetition, the hollow sensation that your choices were pre-filtered long before you made them. That every authentic voice you follow may have been molded, branded, and licensed for mass consumption. That your sense of belonging, your identity, may have been crafted in a boardroom, not in your heart. And suddenly, this isn't about Taylor anymore. It's about trust, about how much of your worldview is sold to you, one chorus at a time. But here's the twist. You're still a participant. You still stream the songs. You still scroll the stories. You still cheer, cry, debate, defend. And that's not weakness. That's human. The system counts on that. It feeds on it. It studies you, not to know you, but to predict you. To perfect the art of persuasion so precisely that you mistake design for destiny. And if an artist can be owned, marketed, distributed, and weaponized, what does that make you? You don't need chains when algorithms shape your opinions. You don't need censorship when you're too distracted to ask the right questions. You don't need propaganda when culture itself becomes the delivery system. This is no longer about who controls fame. It's about who controls meaning. And meaning is the one thing we once believed was ours alone. But now even that feels leased, licensed, temporarily accessible through a screen designed to learn how to keep you from ever looking away. So here's the question no one's asking out loud, because it echoes long after the music stops. If corporations can control the artists you love, who's really controlling you? If you made it this far, you're not just watching, you're thinking. You're one of the few who looked past the spotlight and saw the system that built it. And if this video opened your eyes, even just a little, then you're exactly the kind of person we want with us. Because this channel isn't about feeding you headlines. It's about handing you the map to who's really profiting, who's really controlling the culture, and who's quietly deciding what you believe, buy, and follow without ever saying a word. So before the next layer disappears behind another algorithm, subscribe. Right now, hit that button and stay close. Because every week, we pull the curtain back a little more. And what's coming next will challenge not just what you watch, but why you watch it. The patterns we've revealed today, they're just the surface. The real control goes deeper. Into movements, into governments, into the tech you hold in your hands every day. And if this video left you with that feeling in your chest, that silent question you can't shake, then don't let the system answer it for you. Choose what you see next. Click on the video that's appearing on your screen now, because what we uncover there might explain why none of this was ever about Taylor Swift. It was always about you.